The silence of someone who has suffered too much is often mistaken for coldness. But what if I told you that your inability to trust love isn't because you're broken? It's because your soul is protecting something sacred that was once shattered. There is no coming to consciousness without pain, Jung said. And some of us have become so conscious, we've forgotten how to dream. If you ignore this truth, you'll spend your life apologizing for wisdom that others call wounds. The very thing that makes you careful in love is the same thing that makes you capable of love that others can't even comprehend. You know the moment. Someone reaches toward you with genuine affection, and instead of warmth, you feel a familiar tightness in your chest. Not because you don't want connection, but because every fiber of your being remembers what happened the last time you let someone that close. Sarah sits across from David at dinner. He's kind, present, everything she thought she wanted. 3 months of careful dating, slow reveals testing the waters. But when he leans forward and says, "I really care about you," something inside her goes cold. Not angry, not even afraid, just absent. She nods, smiles, says the right words, but part of her has already left the room, retreated to that internal fortress she built brick by brick after her last relationship ended with betrayal so sharp it felt like surgery without anesthesia. This isn't about being difficult. This is about a nervous system that learned to scan for danger in the very moments that should feel safest. Love for those who've suffered deeply doesn't feel like coming home. It feels like standing at the edge of a cliff being asked to jump, while everyone else insists the landing will be soft this time. Take a breath. Notice what's stirring in your chest right now. Is it recognition resistance? Both your body remembers what your mind tries to forget. It remembers the last time someone said, "Trust me," and then disappeared when trust became inconvenient. It remembers the way care turned conditional, how love felt safe until it didn't, how the same hands that held you learned to hold you back. But here's what most people don't understand. Your hesitation isn't pathology. It's pattern recognition. Your soul has developed a sophisticated early warning system, and it's working exactly as designed. The problem isn't that you're broken. The problem is that you're awake in a world full of people who are sleepwalking through connection. Carl Jung wrote extensively about the persona, the mask we wear to navigate the world. But what happens when that mask becomes so convincing that we forget there's a real face underneath? For those who've endured too much, the persona isn't just social courtesy. It's survival architecture built with the precision of someone who knows that the wrong move can cost everything. You learned to be the calm one, the understanding one, the one who never needs too much. You became skilled at reading rooms like weather patterns, anticipating needs before they were spoken, smoothing over tension before it could touch you. This isn't people-pleasing. This is emotional intelligence forged in fire, refined in the crucible of relationships, that taught you that your feelings were either too much or not enough. But here's what Jung understood that most people miss. When you split yourself to survive, you don't just hide your pain. You hide your aliveness, the very parts of you that feel deeply, that love fiercely, that dream wildly. These get buried alongside the hurt, creating an internal exile that feels like safety, but slowly becomes a prison. Marcus tells everyone he's fine being single. He's got his career, his hobbies, his carefully curated life that looks successful from every angle. But late at night, scrolling through photos of couples on social media, he feels something hollow expand in his chest. Not longing exactly, more like grief for a version of himself he's not sure even exists anymore. the version who used to believe that love was possible without strategy, that vulnerability was strength rather than tactical error. Jung called these complexes emotional knots that live in the unconscious, waiting to be triggered by the slightest reminder of what once hurt us. Your complex around love isn't just about past relationships. It's about the moment you decided that being seen fully was too dangerous, so you learned to love from behind glass, offering carefully measured portions of yourself while keeping the rest locked away. You call it self-protection. But maybe it's something else. Maybe it's the way you learn to love yourself so quietly that no one, not even you, can hear it anymore. Maybe it's the way you became so good at managing your own needs that you forgot what it felt like to have needs that someone else wanted to meet. Pause here. What mask are you wearing right now, even as you listen to this? What parts of yourself are you keeping carefully hidden, even from you? The persona served you well. It kept you functional when falling apart wasn't an option. It got you through family dinners and job interviews and social situations where your real feelings would have been inconvenient for everyone else. But now, when someone tries to love the real you, the one behind the performance, your whole system panics. Because the real you hasn't been touched by kindness in so long, it doesn't recognize safe hands. This is where the Carl Jung shadow work becomes essential. Your shadow isn't just your darkness. It's everything you've learned to keep hidden, including your light, including your need for tenderness, your hunger for understanding, your secret hope that someone might love, not just your strength, but also your struggles. Here's what no one tells you about surviving emotional trauma. It doesn't just change what you fear, it changes what you become brilliant at. Hypervigilance isn't anxiety. It's the superpower of someone who learned to read energy like other people read books. Overthinking isn't obsession. It's the mind of someone who survived by being 10 steps ahead of chaos, calculating outcomes before they become disasters. You notice the micro expressions that others miss. You hear the silences between words. You feel the shift in someone's energy before they even know they've shifted. This isn't madness. This is mastery of emotional intelligence that most people will never possess. But this is where it gets complicated. The world sees your caution and calls it fear. They see your boundaries and call them walls. They see your silence and call it coldness. What they don't see is that every retreat is actually a form of love, a way of protecting both yourself and them from the undertow of your unhealed places. Jung said, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases." Your way of loving, careful, boundaried aware isn't wrong. It's just different from people who never learned that love could be dangerous, that care could be conditional, that forever sometimes means until something better comes along. Helen appears successful to everyone around her. She's the friend who always knows the right thing to say, who remembers birthdays, and shows up in crisis with homemade soup and practical solutions. Her apartment is beautiful. Her career is thriving. Her Instagram feed is a masterclass in curated contentment. But when her sister asks why she's still single at 32, Helen can't explain that her kindness to others is actually a form of hiding. She gives so much because receiving feels impossible. Not because she doesn't want it, but because wanting it feels too much like weakness. Too much like admitting that the careful life she's built isn't quite enough. She's not afraid of love. She's afraid of being known. Because being known means someone might see not just her wounds, but the ways she's learned to carry them. And what if those ways aren't beautiful? What if her coping mechanisms, her strategies for staying afloat, are too much for someone else to hold? This is the Carl Jung shadow that most people misunderstand. Your shadow isn't just your anger or your darkness. It's also your unmet need for tenderness, your hunger for someone to see your efforts, your desperate wish that someone might love not just your strength, but also your exhaustion. It's the part of you that still believes in fairy tales, but has learned to keep that belief hidden, because hope, when disappointed, hurts more than cynicism ever could. Here's the pause that changes everything. What if your mistrust of love isn't pathology? What if it's intelligence? Your nervous system isn't broken for being cautious about people who promise what others have taken away. Your heart isn't cold for needing proof that this time will be different. You're not difficult for requiring someone to earn their way into your inner world rather than expecting instant access to your most vulnerable places. You're just awake. Awake in a way that people who haven't walked through fire can't understand. And sometimes, being awake means watching everyone else sleepwalk toward connections that you can see from miles away won't last. It means recognizing red flags that others call quirks, hearing promises that others call commitments, but are just pretty words without weight behind them. The reveal isn't that you're damaged. The reveal is that you're deep. And depth in a shallow world feels like exile. But what if exile is just another word for being selective? What if your supposed coldness is actually discernment? What if your walls are actually standards? There's a particular loneliness in being the person who sees patterns, who notices inconsistencies, who remembers how people act when they think no one is watching. But there's also a particular strength in it. You don't waste your emotional energy on people who are never going to stay. You don't confuse intensity with intimacy or availability with genuine interest. Jung taught that what we resist persists. But what if you've been resisting the wrong thing? You think you're resisting love, but actually you're resisting the performance of healing. The pressure to be normal, to trust at the pace. Other people expect to pretend that forgiveness erases history instead of just changing your relationship to it. What if the turning point isn't about learning to trust again? What if it's about trusting yourself, your instincts, your timeline, your way of loving, that includes room for complexity and contradiction? The pain you carry isn't punishment. It's memory trying to be respected. When you honor what happened to you, instead of rushing to transcend it, something shifts. Not healing in the way self-help books promise sudden, complete Instagram-worthy, but integration. The slow, sacred work of befriending your own story instead of trying to edit it into something more palatable. Jake used to apologize for being too much, too intense, too deep, too aware of undercurrents others missed. He would catch himself scanning for exits in restaurants, reading the subtext in casual conversations, feeling exhausted after social gatherings because he absorbed everyone else's unspoken emotions. For years, he tried to turn down his sensitivity to become lighter, easier, more like the people who seem to float through life without carrying the weight of the world on their shoulders. But after years of therapy, countless books on trauma recovery, and one particularly honest conversation with his sister, he realized his intensity wasn't a flaw to fix. It was radar, the same sensitivity that made him hard to be around when he was unhealed, made him extraordinary to be around once he learned to channel it. He stopped trying to love like people who'd never been broken. Instead, he learned to love like someone who knew how precious and fragile connection could be. His relationships became fewer but deeper. His boundaries became clearer but kinder. He learned to say no to surface-level connections, not because he was antisocial, but because shallow interactions felt like betrayal of his own depth. The Carl Jung shadow work isn't about eliminating your defensive strategies. It's about understanding why you developed them, what they've protected, and when they might still serve you. Your hypervigilance kept you alive when you needed to survive. Your emotional walls protected your heart when it was too wounded to heal in the open air. Your careful way of loving preserved your capacity for love when carelessness would have destroyed it. This is where you breathe differently. Feel that. That's your soul recognizing truth. You don't have to choose between being aware and being open. You can be both. You can love with your eyes wide open, your intuition engaged, your hard-won wisdom intact. You can offer your heart while also protecting your peace. You can be vulnerable and boundaried, tender and strong, hopeful and realistic. The people who are meant for you won't ask you to love with the naive trust of someone who's never been hurt. They'll appreciate the way you love with the full awareness of someone who knows love's power to both heal and harm. They'll understand that your caution isn't rejection, it's reverence for the sacredness of real connection. This is where everything changes, when you stop seeing your protective mechanisms as problems to solve and start seeing them as wisdom to integrate. Jung's process of individuation isn't about becoming perfect. It's about becoming whole. And wholeness includes the scars, the vigilance, the ways you've learned to navigate a world that taught you to be careful with your tenderness. It includes the parts of you that others might call damaged, and you're learning to call experienced. The return to yourself isn't about going back to who you were before you were hurt. That person is gone, and trying to resurrect them is another form of self-abandonment. The return is to who you are now, scarred, but still here, guarded, but still capable of love, different, but not diminished. When you stop apologizing for needing what you need, something magnetic happens. The right people are drawn to your authenticity. The wrong people lose interest in trying to change you. And you discover that there's a particular beauty in being loved for exactly who you've become, not despite who you've become. Recovery isn't about trusting everyone. It's about trusting yourself to recognize who deserves access to your inner world. It's about knowing that your caution isn't fear, it's discernment. Your boundaries aren't walls. They're gates with you as the gatekeeper deciding who gets to enter the sacred space of your vulnerability. Place your hand on your heart. Feel it beating. This is the sound of surviving, of continuing to show up for love, even when love has shown up inconsistently for you. There's a particular strength in people who love carefully. They don't waste their emotional energy on connections that were never going to sustain depth. They don't confuse intensity with intimacy or availability with interest. They know the difference between someone who wants access to you and someone who wants to know you, between someone who is attracted to your mystery and someone who is committed to your reality. Jung believed that our wounds, when integrated, become our gifts. Your heightened awareness of emotional dynamics makes you capable of relationships that others can't even imagine, connections based on real seeing, real understanding, real choice, rather than just momentum or convenience or the fear of being alone. You've learned to love consciously, intentionally, with full knowledge of what love can cost and what it can give. This makes your love rare, valuable, transformative in ways that easy love never could be. Your hard-won wisdom about relationships becomes a gift, not just to yourself, but to anyone wise enough to receive it. The inner return is coming home to all of yourself, the parts that were hurt, and the parts that healed, the parts that learned to hide, and the parts that learned to seek the parts that built walls and the parts that build bridges. You are not a broken thing that needs fixing. You are a complex, beautiful, evolved being who learned to survive and is now learning to thrive. You are not broken. You are not too much. You are not cold or difficult or impossible to love. You are layered deep and still here because something in you refused to give up on the possibility of real connection, even when real connection felt like the most dangerous thing in the world, even when every experience told you that trusting was foolish, that hoping was naive, that love was just another word for eventual disappointment. The journey isn't about fixing yourself to be worthy of love. It's about honoring yourself enough to be selective about love. It's about recognizing that your particular way of caring, careful, conscious aware, is needed in a world full of careless hearts and casual promises, in a world where depth is often mistaken for drama and wisdom is confused with damage. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Who you truly are includes the ways trauma has shaped you, the wisdom your pain has given you, the particular brand of love you've learned to offer and receive. It includes your ability to hold space for complexity, to love with awareness, to offer your heart without losing yourself in the process. Your Carl Jung shadow isn't your enemy. It's your guardian, your teacher, your reminder that you've survived things that would have destroyed a lesser soul. And your way of loving, thoughtful, boundaried aware isn't a consolation prize. It's the prize itself. It's love, evolved love that has learned from experience. Love that protects what is sacred while still remaining open to what is possible. The right person won't ask you to love recklessly. They'll be grateful to be loved consciously, intentionally by someone who knows the difference between connection and consumption, between intimacy and intrusion, between love and the performance of love. They'll understand that being chosen by someone who chooses carefully is the highest honor, that being trusted by someone who trusts slowly is the deepest gift. Healing is not a destination. It's a return to the person you were before the world forgot how to hold you gently. But now, you know how to hold yourself. And that changes everything. You know how to create safety from the inside out, how to be your own sanctuary, while still remaining open to sacred connection. If this resonated with something deep in your chest, something that rarely gets acknowledged, something that has been waiting to be seen and understood, let me know in the comments. Write, "I'm learning to come home to myself." Let's create a space where the carefully loving can recognize each other, where depth is celebrated rather than pathologized, where the wounded healers can find their tribe. You don't have to heal to be worthy of love. You just have to be brave enough to let yourself be seen, not as the person you think you should be, but as the person you actually are. Scars and boundaries and beautiful hard-won wisdom included. The silence of someone who has suffered too much isn't emptiness. It's fullness waiting for someone safe enough to receive it. It's love that has learned to be patient, careful, intentional. It's a heart that still believes in connection, but insists on connection, that honors the sacredness of what it means to truly know and be known. Your way of loving, conscious, boundaried aware isn't the consolation prize. It's the evolution of love itself. In a world of casual connection, you offer sacred communion. In a world of surface interaction, you provide depth that transforms. In a world of easy come, easy go, you give the gift of choosing to stay, of working through complexity, of loving, Not just the light, but the shadow too. Take this with you. The very thing that makes you careful in love is the same thing that makes you capable of love that changes people. Love that heals love, that honors the full spectrum of what it means to be beautifully, complexly, courageously human.